the first SmackDown coming off that Rumble, and we're going to talk a little bit here about some of the travel because it is insane. It's part of a double taping the night after the Rumble because there's a house show that's coming up in Honolulu, Hawaii. So we're going to talk about the travel here. Rumble's on Sunday in Fresno. Okay. Raw and SmackDown is on Monday in San Jose. On Wednesday, February 2nd, there's a house show in Hawaii that you all have to fly to. You guys did some serious miles back then, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. And this trip was really brutal because we went from California to Hawaii, I think to Japan, and then to Alaska. And we did that in 4 days. Like we only stayed overnight, I believe, in California. And the rest of the trip, we were sleeping while we were flying in the air. So, it was just a crazy schedule back then. And we were doing a lot of dates.
Yeah, when you think of that, you're like, oh, I get to, as the average Joe, oh, I'm going to get to go to Hawaii. Oh, I'm going to get to go to Japan. Oh, we get to see Alaska. Hell, within days of each other. Are you kidding me? I mean, you have to look at this and be like, what is this? Absolutely brutal. I mean, this is a nightmare.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it because I didn't know at the time that we weren't going to stay overnight. So when I went to Hawaii, it was the first time I was ever there. So I made sure I went to the frickin' beach. I could only go down there for a half hour, and I had to go back to the arena and then have my match because when the match was over, we were going to fly out to Japan. So this is how travel was a lot in the WWE when we did international travel.
Well, not only that, we've talked about it before. You were always hurting. I mean, around this time of your career, whether you're dealing with injury, and you've said it to me multiple times, Paul, it was just part of the business. I just learned to deal and cope with injuries. I didn't make a big deal about it. I just learned to live with pain. But again, in an airplane constantly for all those hours, it had to be extra stiff and, just add to the burden of what you were up against in terms of traveling and working.
It was a lot more difficult, traveling a lot more like this, especially with injuries. But at this particular time, I was feeling pretty good. This was 2005. This is right before I wrestled Sean. I didn't have any injuries that hobbled me for too much, at least not until after WrestleMania. So I was pretty good at this particular time.
And how long are these double tapings with Raw and SmackDown running back to back? My goodness.
5 6 hours. I mean, it was brutal, and we started earlier in the day, which was an advantage, but we still didn't get done till late at night. So it was always a long time. And anytime we did two tapings in a row, it was brutal.
And what you said right there too, I want to draw some attention to. You're also dealing with constantly changing the time, right? You're going into different time zones, back and forth, and that's got to be hideous for your sleep schedule too, and all that.
It wears on you too. You end up losing sleep. You ended up not being able to sleep at the right time. You ended up dozing off in the middle of the day. All this travel and going to different time zones is really confusing on your body.
Well, Kurt, you were doing it. All the guys were doing it back then, and much to the fans' approval, and we thank you for the commitment and getting it done. But we're going to continue on with the storyline here because on SmackDown, Teddy Long would announce an 8-man tournament to determine JBL's WrestleMania challenger at the Rumble because Batista had won at the Rumble. And I got to ask this, Kurt, because this is the Rumble where Batista and Cena went out together. You had Vince run down. Vince blows out his quads trying to climb into the ring. Okay, he's injured. He does get to restart the match. Okay, Batista ends up winning. Do you remember the moment he blows his quads and what it was like for him to come back after that and through the
Yes,
curtain?
listen, this was amazing. What happened was Batista and Cena. Batista was supposed to eliminate Cena, but Batista actually eliminated himself with Cena. Thank God they landed on the ground at the same time. Because if Batista would have landed first, Cena would have won, and that's what the company did not want. They wanted Batista to win. So Vince comes down, he's pissed off. And this is how much of a badass Vince is. He goes down, he's doing the Vince McMahon walk, really hard, real stiff, and he walks down and he dives into the ring head first. But his legs don't go in. His legs get stuck on the side of the ring. What happens is his tendons on his knees broke, both popped, and they rolled up. The muscles rolled up on his legs, up his thighs. So they're up at the top of his thighs, both muscles. They're in a ball. Vince is in the ring with his legs mangled sideways. He straightens them out. He's like, all right, you guys are going to start this match over. He gets out of the ring, and he won't let anybody help him. He walks back without his quads all the way back to the gorilla, sits in the gorilla, and doesn't want anybody to see him hurt. So he puts the earphones on and he says, "What do we have next?" And the producer's talking to him. So after the show's over, Vince won't move. He won't let anybody see him injured or weak. Vince waits till everybody leaves the arena before he has the EMTs come and get him. That's how prideful Vince is. He's a badass.
I was watching something on this, Kurt, as I was doing the research for the show, and it was Edge who did an interview, and he said, "Listen, all the boys cleared out of the hallway because they wanted to stay way away from Vince when he came back through that curtain." Because you can imagine.
Vince had to be pissed off at Cena and Batista because that should never have happened. But he had to come out and restart the match because they landed on the ground at the same time. But I'm sure Vince was like, "These son of bitches, they injured my legs." I mean, it was pretty bad. But I know Vince didn't blame them. But at the same time, if they wouldn't have done what they did, if they wouldn't have messed up that spot, I think Vince would have never had his legs messed up the way they were.
I mean, and a quad injury, it sounds like sickening pain. Triple H dealt with it. Have you ever had a torn
you
quad?
have to staple them back to your kneecaps, where the tendons start. And you roll the muscles down, you staple them back, and it takes at least a year to recover. It's a long journey. But Vince and Triple H did it in about 8 months. They were pretty brief about their recovery.